Escaping the Darkness, 15. Black actresses who overcame horrible pasts. We applaud the dazzling hits. But have you ever wondered who truly lives behind the fading applause? Imagine a legendary icon, once commanding the Grammy stage, now forced to survive in a cold rented apartment, or a musical genius, abandoned to obscurity after building an empire. These are not just tragic fragments of history. They are the bleeding hearts of artists, buried alive beneath the polished glitter of Hollywood. Welcome to Melanin Spotlight. Today we expose the chilling reality of stars who gave everything to the world, only to be cast into the dark by a machine that extracts their brilliance and discards their soul. Subscribe now. Hit the bell and comment below. Why does the industry systematically silence its greatest legends? Tamara Dobson died age 59 in 2006, in the early 1970s. Tamara Dobson emerged as a singular force in American cinema. A woman of statuesque beauty, magnetic presence, and undeniable talent. Standing 6'2", she didn't just walk into a room, she commanded it. Her ascent to stardom culminated in her iconic title role in 1973's Cleopatra Jones, where she became a quintessential hero of the blaxploitation era, representing strength, style, and uncompromising agency. However, behind the glitz of the premiere nights and the flash of photographer bulbs lay a far more complex and sobering reality. The Hollywood of that era was a rigid, often hostile landscape for black women, one that sought to package their brilliance into narrow, marketable tropes, while simultaneously denying them the structural support afforded to their white contemporaries. Tamara's journey was defined by a constant battle for creative autonomy. While her performance in Cleopatra Jones became a cultural touchstone, the studio's treatment of her, following the film's massive commercial success, revealed the industry's disposable nature. When she challenged the studio's attempt to enforce creative changes that compromised the integrity of her characters, she was met with immediate professional friction. Hollywood, ever sensitive to non-compliance, began to systematically close doors. Despite her international acclaim, the roles that should have been hers were suddenly reassigned, and the industry's blacklist culture effectively derailed her momentum. She refused to be a mere prop in a machine that didn't respect her vision, choosing instead to walk away from the glare of the spotlight. In the decades that followed, Tamara transitioned into a quiet life, shunning the hollow validation of the entertainment world to pursue a career in real estate. She lived with a dignified, guarded solitude, largely turning her back on an industry that had promised her the world, only to retreat when she demanded respect. When she passed away in 2006 at the age of 59, her death marked the end of a trailblazing life that had been marked by both immense triumph and the deep, silent scars of a system that wasn't built to sustain her. Tamara Dobson remains a monument to artistic integrity, a star who burned brightly on her own terms and refused to dim her light for anyone. Vonetta McGee died age 65 in 2010. Vonetta McGee was one of the most compelling and gifted actresses to emerge during the 1970s, possessing an elegance and range that made her a standout in a genre often limited by superficial expectations. After cutting her teeth on the experimental theater stages of Los Angeles, she exploded into the public consciousness with her powerhouse performance in the 1972 cult classic Blackula. Her portrayal of Luva was iconic, blending vulnerability with a quiet, commanding strength that proved she was capable of far more than the standard roles offered to black women in Hollywood at the time. Yet, like so many of her peers, Vonetta found herself caught in the vice grip of an industry that preferred to stamp her with a narrow label, the sultry exploitation queen. Her refusal to accept these one-dimensional caricatures was both her greatest strength and her professional undoing. When studios began to demand gratuitous, unnecessary nude scenes that served no narrative purpose, Vonetta consistently pushed back, prioritizing her personal standards over the dictates of profit-hungry producers. This defiance led to an informal blacklisting that sidelined her from major mainstream projects. Exhausted by the systemic injustice and the lack of creative opportunities, she moved to Europe in the mid-1970s to seek more diverse work before eventually retreating from the industry entirely by 1980. She spent her final decades in relative isolation in Oakland, far from the artificial glitz of a town that had undervalued her talent. When she passed away in 2010 at age 65, she left behind a legacy not defined by the roles she was forced to play, but by the dignity she maintained when she walked away. Diana Sands died age 39 in 1973. Diana Sands was quite simply a titan of the stage, a formidable talent whose career trajectory promised to alter the face of American cinema forever. Her unforgettable turn as Beneath, a younger in the 1961 film adaptation of A Raisin in the Sun, proved that she possessed an emotional depth and intensity that few of her contemporaries could rival. She was a powerhouse who commanded attention with every word. Yet she spent her career battling the dual prejudices of gender and race in a studio system that lacked the imagination to utilize her full scope. While audiences were captivated by her radiance, the industry's executives remained stubbornly focused on reducing her to her allure, placing her in a box that strictly limited her path to lead roles. The tragedy of Diana Sands is a story of a brilliant fire extinguished just as it reached its peak intensity. Despite her undeniable talent, she found herself blocked from high-profile projects, frequently passed over for leads in favor of less capable stars who were deemed more marketable by studio heads. The heartbreak was compounded when she was diagnosed with breast cancer in 1967. Rather than receiving the institutional support one might expect for a star of her stature, she found herself largely on her own, facing a brutal illness without the lifeline of a supportive empire. She passed away in 1973 at the age of 39, leaving behind a profound sense of what could have been. Diana Sands remains a haunting reminder of the immense cost of systemic bias, representing a generation of genius whose brilliance was systematically muffled by an establishment that feared the power of their presence. How do the stories of Vanetta and Diana reshape your perspective on the history of cinema? Are their legacies defined by the roles they played, or by the courage they showed in refusing to compromise their integrity in a ruthless industry? Share your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to subscribe to American Icon Stories as we continue to uncover the real, unvarnished truths behind the legends who shaped our world. Gloria Hendry, 77, age now. Gloria Hendry remains a vibrant and enduring figure in cinematic history. A woman whose career began with the electrifying energy of the Las Vegas stage. In the 1970s, she transitioned into the Hollywood spotlight, becoming one of the most recognizable faces of the blaxploitation era. Her performances in Black Caesar and Hell Up in Harlem showcased a unique blend of physical presence and charisma, which eventually led to her historic role as a Bond girl in 1973's Live and Let Die. Yet this rise to international prominence was tempered by the harsh realities of the era's racial politics. Most notably, when her romantic scenes with Roger Moore were censored in the southern United States. A stinging reminder of the societal barriers she was constantly navigating. While many might have withered under such blatant institutional racism, Gloria maintained a defiant spirit. When the industry attempted to pigeonhole her into exploitative low-budget roles that lacked the prestige of her earlier work, she chose to set firm boundaries. Ultimately, she recognized that the path offered by major studios was one that would compromise her dignity. By 1976, she made the conscious decision to step away from the pressures of the acting world. She successfully transitioned into a fulfilling career with the United States Postal Service, choosing a life of stability and privacy over the transient nature of Hollywood fame. Today at 77, she stands as a symbol of resilient autonomy, a legend who proved that true success is found not in the approval of a fickle industry, but in the power to choose one's own path. Hilda Sims died age 75 in 1994. Hilda Sims was a trailblazing talent whose artistry was initially forged in the crucible of New York's theater scene. In 1952, she achieved a significant victory for black performers by conquering Broadway with her lead role in Ana Lucasta, a performance that drew critical acclaim and showcased her exceptional dramatic range. However, the transition to the insular, often exclusionary world of Tinseltown proved to be a formidable challenge. While she arrived with the reputation of a Broadway star, she quickly discovered that Hollywood's power structure was far less forgiving and far more rigid than the world she had left behind. Her journey in film was marked by a relentless struggle to find roles that matched her intellectual and artistic capacity. Despite her undeniable talent, she found herself trapped in a cycle of limited opportunities and box office disappointments, which studio executives unfairly used as a justification to withhold support. In an industry that often blamed the actor for the failures of poor scripts or mismanagement, Hilda was marginalized and eventually blacklisted from major mainstream opportunities. She spent her later years dedicated to teaching and community theater, pouring her vast expertise into mentoring the next generation of performers. When she passed away in 1994 at the age of 75, she left behind a legacy defined by her uncompromising standards. Hilda Sims was a pioneer who refused to be reduced to a stereotype, serving as a reminder that the true measure of an artist is often found in the barriers they courageously stood against. How do you view the choices of legends? Like Gloria and Hilda, was stepping away from Hollywood a sign of defeat, or was it the ultimate act of liberation in an industry that didn't know how to value their full potential? Share your perspective in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to American Icon Stories as we continue to uncover the real, unvarnished truths behind the legends who shaped our world. Dorothy Dandridge, die age 42 in 1965. Dorothy Dandridge was the radiant epitome of 1950s glamour, a screen icon whose beauty was matched only by her profound, often overlooked talent. In 1954, she shattered the industry's racial ceiling by becoming the first black woman to receive an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress for her unforgettable lead performance in Carmen Jones. Yet the light that made her a global star also exposed her to a dark, punishing reality. Behind the polished facade of Hollywood's golden age, Dorothy was a woman caught in a trap of systemic prejudice, constantly fighting for roles that reflected her ability rather than her ethnicity. Her career was a precarious climb, hindered by studio executives who treated her not as an artist, but as a marketing experiment. Her fall from grace was as sudden as it was cruel. The industry that had celebrated her quickly turned its back when she refused to be confined to the narrow, often degrading roles they demanded. Following a series of failed business investments and a deeply exploitative personal life, Dorothy's world began to crumble. By 1963, she faced total bankruptcy and the crushing loss of custody over her daughter. The isolation was profound. The same studio system that had once courted her now watched in indifference as she descended into a spiral of depression and struggle. When she was found dead from an overdose in 1965 at the age of 42, it marked a tragic end to a pioneering life. Dorothy Dandridge remains a cautionary tale of a genius who was built up only to be abandoned when she could no longer conform to a machine that never truly valued her soul. Eartha Kitt, die age 81 in 2008. Eartha Kitt was a force of nature, a seductive, brilliant, and fiercely independent performer who transcended the labels of actress, singer, and icon, rising from a background of poverty to conquer both Broadway and the silver screen. She possessed a sharp intellect that was far more dangerous to the establishment than her famous feline allure. In 1950, while performing in Paris, she was plucked from the jazz circuit to star as Helen of Troy in Orson Welles' Dr. Faustus. It was a launchpad into the highest echelons of entertainment, yet it also marked the beginning of a lifetime spent under the suspicious gaze of those in power. Her trajectory was marked by an unwavering refusal to be silenced. Eartha was never just a star. She was a truth-teller. Her career hit an insurmountable wall in 1968, when she openly denounced the Vietnam War during a White House luncheon, directly challenging the political establishment. The retaliation was swift and total. She was blacklisted from American film and television, with the CIA reportedly maintaining a file on her that labeled her a nightmare because of her defiance. Forced into exile in Europe for a decade, she refused to apologize instead, building a global legacy on her own terms. When she passed away in 2008 at 81, she did so as a woman who had never bowed to the machine. Eartha Kitt's life stands as a testament to the fact that while an industry can block a career, it can never conquer a spirit that chooses integrity over submission. Do you believe the stories of Dorothy and Eartha reveal the true price of fame in a biased industry? Is it possible that their greatest tragedy was not their struggles, but the world's failure to recognize their full potential? Share your perspective in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to American Icon Stories as we continue to uncover the real, unvarnished truths behind the legends who shaped our world. Diahann Carroll died age 84 in 2019. Diahann Carroll was a sharp, stunning, and gifted trailblazer who fundamentally reshaped the American television landscape. In 1968, she made history as the star of Julia, becoming the first black woman to lead an American television series in a role that was not a domestic servant. While the show was a massive commercial hit that vaulted her to global stardom, the reality behind the scenes was one of immense, often invisible pressure. Diahann became a symbol of a movement. Yet she found herself boxed into a rigid persona, the perfect image that the industry deemed acceptable. Because the show was often criticized for being whitewashed, Diahann struggled to escape the limitations imposed by her own success. Throughout her career, she faced a painful reality. The film industry that cheered for her television breakthrough rarely offered her the deep, nuanced, cinematic roles she craved. She felt the heavy weight of being a token of progress in an era that was still deeply resistant to true inclusion. Her personal life suffered under the relentless strain of her public image, and by the mid-1970s, she found herself navigating significant financial and personal setbacks. Yet Diahann remained a symbol of elegance and resilience. When she passed away in 2019 at the age of 84, she left behind a legacy that transcended the screen. She was a woman who navigated a world that constantly attempted to rewrite her narrative, always maintaining a luminous dignity that paved the way for generations of black actresses to come. Cicely Tyson died age 96 in 2021. Cicely Tyson was a titan of the screen, an icon whose career was defined by an uncompromising commitment to dignity and truth. Unlike many of her contemporaries who were forced to accept the industry's reductive, stereotype-driven roles, Cicely made a historic vow she would only accept parts that portrayed black women with depth, humanity, and strength. In the 1960s and 70s, this stance was seen as professional suicide in a Hollywood that was largely uninterested in nuanced black stories. Yet by standing her ground, she forced the industry to evolve, ultimately delivering legendary performances in projects like Sounder and the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. However, this path to greatness was grueling. During the times when the industry refused to meet her standards, Cicely faced years of professional exile and genuine financial struggle. There were long stretches where she existed on the margins of the spotlight, refusing to trade her principles for a paycheck. She bore the cost of her integrity with a quiet, steely resolve that few fully understood at the time. When she finally achieved the status of a living legend, it was not because the system had opened its doors, but because she had literally broken them down. Passing away in 2021 at the age of 96, Cicely Tyson died as a woman who never compromised her vision of herself. She remains an unbreakable monument to artistic survival, proof that true royalty is built on a foundation of principle, not the shifting tides of corporate approval. How do the stories of Diahann and Cicely change your understanding of what it means to be a successful icon in Hollywood? Do you believe their struggle for representation was the most significant contribution they made to cinema? Share your perspective in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to American Icon Stories as we continue to uncover the real, unvarnished truths behind the legends who shaped our world. Juanita Moore died age 95 in 2014. Juanita Moore was a powerhouse of emotional authenticity. A veteran of the screen whose talent was often underestimated by the power structures of her day. She etched her name into cinema history with her poignant, soul-stirring performance in the 1959 classic Imitation of Life. Playing a woman entangled in the agonizing complexities of racial strife and maternal sacrifice, her work was so profoundly moving that it earned her an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress. Yet, in an industry obsessed with color and profit, her monumental talent did not translate into the long-term career security she deserved. After the accolades for Imitation of Life subsided, the doors that should have remained wide open for a star of her caliber abruptly narrowed. She spent the following decades fighting a quiet battle against a system that relegated her to secondary roles, often paying her a fraction of what her white contemporaries commanded for similar work. The prestige of an Oscar nod could not shield her from the industry's systemic indifference. As roles dried up and leads became scarce, Juanita's presence in Hollywood shifted from star to familiar face, a transition that masked the struggle of an artist whose creative fire was systematically dampened by limited opportunity. She lived her later years in relative obscurity, a testament to the fact that talent alone is rarely enough in an arena that prizes conformity over truth. Passing away at 95 in 2014, Juanita Moore's life is a reminder of the many giants of the silver screen whose immense contributions were muffled by the very industry they helped build. Pam Grier, 76, aged now. Pam Grier is the undisputed sovereign of action, cinema, and icon, whose career redefined the archetype of the hero in the 1970s. As the face of definitive films like Coffee and Foxy Brown, she captivated audiences not only with her undeniable screen presence, but with a fierce personal steel that resonated far beyond the theater. Pam didn't just play roles. She projected an image of bold, unapologetic agency that was revolutionary for the era. However, this rise to prominence was navigated in a landscape filled with hidden landmines. Early in her career, she faced the brutal choice that many young stars were forced to confront, sacrificing one's personal boundaries to gain a foothold in an industry controlled by men who viewed her agency as a threat. Pam's journey is one of incredible endurance. Beyond the screen, she battled significant health crises, including a stage 3 cervical cancer diagnosis in the late 1970s that briefly sidelined her career and forced her into a period of deep private struggle. When she returned to the spotlight, the industry had moved on, and she found herself having to rebuild her legacy from the ground up. She refused to be buried by the past or by the limitations Hollywood tried to impose on her, eventually securing a triumphant comeback that showcased her range far beyond the action roles of her youth. Today at 76, Pam Grier stands as a radiant, unbreakable monument to survival. She is a woman who navigated the darkness of fame by forging her own path, proving that true icon status is not granted by the studio, but earned through the strength to keep rising. How do the legacies of Juanita and Pam change how you view the challenges faced by legendary actresses? Is it their survival of the industry's harsh machinery that makes their stories so vital for us to remember? Share your perspective in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to American Icon Stories as we continue to uncover the real, unvarnished truths behind the legends who shaped our world. Rosalind Cash died age 56 in 1995. Rosalind Cash was a magnetic, fiercely intelligent presence on screen, known for her sharp wit and radiant vitality. Her breakout role in the 1971 sci-fi epic The Omega Man established her as a powerhouse of the decade. Yet her career trajectory remains one of the most sobering examples of Hollywood's systemic cruelty. Following her star-making turn, she was abruptly slapped with a restrictive studio clause that forbade her from appearing in romantic roles opposite white actors in future films. This blatant discriminatory barrier effectively strangled her momentum, rendering her nearly uncastable for the high-profile leads she had clearly earned. The impact was devastating. Opportunities that should have propelled her into the highest echelons of stardom evaporated overnight, replaced by an endless cycle of minor television parts and bit roles that failed to showcase even a fraction of her capability. For years, she watched as her career stagnated, trapped in an industry that prioritized its own prejudices over the preservation of genuine talent. Rosalind carried herself with grace until the end. But her premature passing at the age of 56 in 1995 felt like the final closing of a door that Hollywood never truly allowed her to enter. She remains an icon of vast, unfulfilled promise, a brilliant spirit who was not defeated by a lack of skill, but by an institutional machine that was determined to keep her in the dark. Nichelle Nichols, die age 89 in 2022. Nichelle Nichols was a pioneer in the truest sense of the word. An icon whose name is synonymous with innovation and the shattering of racial barriers. Her portrayal of Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek in the 1960s was more than just a television role. It was a cultural earthquake, marking the first time a black woman was cast in a position of authority in mainstream American sci-fi. Yet her triumph on screen masked a grueling daily war for survival. Even at the height of her Star Trek fame, Nichelle was subjected to blatant pay discriminations, receiving only half the salary of her white co-stars, while enduring constant microaggressions and professional disrespect from those in power. The toll of this environment was so severe that she nearly resigned in 1967. It was only after a fateful conversation with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who emphasized that her presence on the bridge of the Enterprise was a historic leap for black rights, that she found the strength to continue. Despite her monumental influence, she spent the post-1969 years grinding for professional recognition, often overlooked for the major cinematic roles her stature demanded. She dedicated much of her later life to working with NASA, inspiring generations of marginalized youth to reach for the stars. When she passed away in 2022 at age 89, she left behind a legacy that transcended film. She was an unyielding force of grit, sacrifice, and visionary drive, who refused to let the system define the limits of her orbit. How do the paths of Rosalind and Nichelle change your perception of the golden age of cinema? Do you see their lives as stories of triumph or as reminders of how much brilliance has been suppressed by the industry? Share your perspective in the comments below and make sure to subscribe to American Icon Stories as we continue to uncover the real, unvarnished truths behind the legends who shaped our world. Pearl Bailey, die age 72 in 1990. Pearl Bailey was one of America's most celebrated treasures. A legend whose voice and presence brought a rare, emotional warmth to both music and film. Yet her rise to the pinnacle of Hollywood was paved with a steep, heartbreaking levee. In 1953, her talent caught the eye of studio power brokers, leading to a fateful meeting that would forever alter her life. What began as a promise of cinematic stardom quickly devolved into a transaction. To secure her debut role in the 1954 film Carmen Jones, she was locked into a 7-year exclusive contract that paid at the absolute bottom of the scale, a move that effectively treated her as a disposable commodity, rather than the legendary star she clearly was. For years, Pearl lived on the margins of the Hollywood machine, scraping for breaks, while being cast in minor, often comic roles that never allowed her to showcase the true depth of her artistry. She was a woman who had wagered her dignity for a seat at the table, only to find the table was designed to keep her small. Eventually, Pearl realized the film industry was a dead end that would never honor her value. In 1960, she made the courageous choice to abandon the studio system entirely, returning to the stage where her brilliance could truly shine without the interference of corporate handlers. Through her later years, she blazed on grand platforms, finding the fire and recognition the film industry had systematically denied her. When she passed away in 1990, she left behind a legacy that served as a stark, enduring reminder of the brutal cost of Hollywood dreams. Lena Horne, die age 92 in 2010. Lena Horne was the embodiment of elegance and vocal perfection. A legendary icon whose life was a series of battles against a machine determined to diminish her. When MGM signed her to a long-term contract in 1942, they promised to make her a global screen star, starting with Cabin in the Sky. But behind the glamour of the studio's pitch lay a shadowed reality where Lena's autonomy was stripped away. As she ascended to stardom, she found herself caught in the vice of Hollywood's vicious racial codes. The studio made it clear her value was tied to her compliance, and that meant suffering through roles that were edited for racist Southern audiences, and being forced to perform in a system that wouldn't even allow her to share a scene with white co-stars. Her struggle reached a breaking point in 1950 when she refused to participate in the manipulative, lover-like liaisons that studio bosses demanded of their leading women. Her refusal to play the game triggered a cold-blooded retaliation. The studio effectively froze her career, and her long-term film deal was allowed to vanish. Hollywood turned its back on her, but Lena refused to be silenced. She pivoted toward a triumphant career in singing and activism, becoming a voice that no corporate board could dictate. She remained a radiant, defiant presence until her death in 2010 at age 92. Lena Horne did not just leave behind music. She left behind the story of a woman who was offered a cage, gilded in gold, and chose instead to set herself free even at the cost of the Hollywood stardom they told her she couldn't live without. How do you view the sacrifices made by icons like Pearl and Lena? Is it possible that their refusal to be owned by the industry is what actually made them true, unforgettable legends? Share your perspective in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to American Icon Stories as we continue to uncover the real, unvarnished truths behind the legends who shaped our world. Hattie McDaniel died age 57 in 1952. Hattie McDaniel was a trailblazer whose name is etched in history as the first black performer to win an Academy Award for her role as Mammy in Gone with the Wind, 1939. Yet this monumental triumph was darkened by the stinging reality of the Jim Crow era. Even at the height of her success, she was not permitted to sit with her co-stars at the awards ceremony in the No Blacks Allowed Ambassador Hotel. For Hattie, the glory of the Oscar was hollowed out by the indignities she faced daily. She was constantly attacked by critics on both sides of the spectrum, white audiences who saw her as a threat to the status quo, and black activists who condemned the stereotypical mammy roles she was forced to play to survive in a segregated industry. Hattie understood the game better than most. She famously retorted, "I'd rather play a maid than be one." She spent her life navigating a tightrope, playing the roles permitted to her while pushing for dignity behind the scenes. However, the industry offered her no protection. In her final years, she faced declining health and financial strain, abandoned by the very studio system that had profited from her talent. When she passed away in 1952 at age 57, she died in relative solitude. She left behind a complex, bittersweet legacy as a woman who fought for space in a world that refused to give her a seat at the table, proving that her strength lay not in the awards on her mantle, but in her unyielding perseverance against impossible odds. Marilyn Monroe died age 36 in 1962. Marilyn Monroe is perhaps the most enduring symbol of Hollywood's golden age. A woman whose image was plastered on millions of screens worldwide. But beneath the platinum blonde curls and the breathy, seductive persona lay a person struggling to survive the suffocating weight of being a manufactured commodity. Marilyn was the crown jewel of the studio system, which treated her as a product to be molded, sold, and eventually discarded when she began to demand creative control. She was locked into restrictive contracts that paid her a fraction of the millions she generated, and she spent her career fighting a losing battle against the narrow bimbo archetype that the studios refused to let her outgrow. Her final years were defined by a desperate search for authenticity in an industry that thrived on illusion. She sought refuge in the actor's studio to hone her craft, trying to prove her worth as a serious dramatic actress, only to be met with ridicule from executives who feared her growing independence. Her sudden death in 1962, at the age of 36, remains one of history's most debated mysteries, fueling endless theories about the dark side of celebrity. Marilyn was a woman who was loved by the world, but ultimately failed by the industry she made rich. She serves as a poignant reminder that in the cold machinery of Hollywood, Even the brightest stars are eventually consumed by the very light they provide. How do the stories of Hattie and Marilyn reshape your understanding of the golden age of cinema? Do you see their lives as stories of triumph or as reminders of how much brilliance has been suppressed or exploited by the industry? Share your perspective in the comments below and make sure to subscribe to American Icon Stories as we continue to uncover the real, unvarnished truths behind the legends who shaped our world. Ethel Waters, die age 81 in 1977. Ethel Waters was a towering figure in American entertainment. A woman whose career broke racial barriers on both the Broadway stage and the silver screen. She was the first black performer to receive an Emmy Award nomination and the second to be nominated for an Academy Award. Yet despite her monumental success, her life was a constant struggle against an industry that sought to exploit her talents while denying her the dignity she earned. She was frequently confined to stereotypical roles, a reality that forced her into a lifelong battle for creative agency. In her final years, she largely turned away from the secular spotlight, finding solace in her deep religious faith. When she passed away in 1977 at age 81, she left behind a legacy that paved the way for every performer who followed, standing as a testament to an artist who refused to let the system define her worth. Anna May Wong, died age 56 in 1961. Anna May Wong holds a distinct place in history as the first Chinese-American film star, an artist who achieved international fame despite the suffocating prejudices of her time. In a Hollywood landscape that actively barred Asian actors from lead roles or depicted them through offensive caricatures, Anna May used her charisma and skill to navigate a global career. She starred in landmark films like Shanghai Express, yet she was consistently denied the roles she truly wanted because of anti-miscegenation laws and the industry's refusal to cast her as a lead alongside white actors. Her journey was one of profound resilience in the face of persistent marginalization. Despite her talent, she was often forced to seek work in Europe to escape the restrictive dragon lady tropes imposed upon her by American studios. Anna May spent her career fighting to be seen as a serious actress in an industry that preferred to treat her as an exotic spectacle. When she passed away in 1961 at age 56, her death marked the end of a trailblazing life that had been defined by a quiet, persistent defiance. She remains an icon of grace under fire, a woman who opened doors that had been firmly bolted shut, proving that talent and tenacity can persist even when the world is not yet ready to fully embrace them. How do the stories of Ethel and Anna May change your perception of the history of the entertainment industry? Do you believe their legacies are defined by the roles they were given, or by the unprecedented barriers they broke down? Share your perspective in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to American Icon Stories as we continue to uncover the real, unvarnished truths behind the legends who shaped our world. These raw biographies leave us with a polarizing question that cuts to the core of our entertainment culture. We honor the dead with grand monuments, but why do we systematically ignore the living legends who walk among us in silence? Are major record labels and corporate executives the true calculating villains of this tragic cycle? Or are we as audiences equally responsible for chasing fleeting trends while leaving timeless genius to suffer alone? Should the industry face strict legal regulations to protect its pioneers, or has the system always been too corrupt to fix? Share your honest thoughts in the comments section below. Let's make sure their voices are finally witnessed. Subscribe to Melanin Spotlight and help us keep the truth alive.